My name is Robin, and my ex-wife's name is Josephine. We are both 32 years old and live in Stockholm. I work as a journalist for a major newspaper, and she works as a lawyer at a medium-sized firm. There are about 25 lawyers and a dozen other employees. We met about 7 years ago through mutual friends. We clicked right away. We practically didn't leave each other's side, and from then on, we were a couple. We think similarly and like roughly the same things. A perfect match, simply put. A year later, we got married. Now, however, I have a problem that recently came up, and I really need advice. About 3 weeks ago, I started noticing that she began acting strangely. She became increasingly secretive with her phone and would leave the room whenever she got a text or a call. She started working overtime more, with longer hours and more frequent work trips. A few times I asked her why she was being so secretive with her phone, but she dismissed me and once even gave me a small mocking laugh, as if to say, "Are you insecure?" At one point I tried to sneak a glance when she was holding her phone, and she became aggressive. That's when I realized something was wrong. It was an extreme overreaction to someone merely leaning over her shoulder when she got a text. I started checking computers and similar devices to see if I could find any information about what she was up to, but I didn't find anything. It was worrying because I knew something was wrong, and I asked her about it, but she kept dismissing me every time. Tonight, the bomb dropped. She came home from work and wanted to talk. It's never good when your wife says something like that. 9 times out of 10, it means I should stay quiet while she explains how things are. And it turned out to be exactly that. We sat down in the kitchen and she looked determined, but also nervous. I got a really weird vibe from her. She started talking about one of her girlfriends and her husband, who had changed their relationship to allow for more personal freedom and to grow as a couple. The whole thing was very vague, and she talked at length about growing together and finding security in the relationship. It was completely incomprehensible, and I had no idea what she meant. I just sat there quietly listening. She talked nonstop for 15 minutes without pause. She repeated herself several times but never got to the point, which made me nervous. It was obvious there was something she was anxious about bringing up. Otherwise, she could have just come straight out with it. Eventually, it came out that her girlfriend and her husband had opened up their relationship, and she wanted to do the same. I was completely stunned. I was silent for a moment and then asked what exactly that meant. She said it meant we could date other people. And her friend Anna, now she mentioned her name, had said their relationship had improved significantly because of it. I don't know if she intended to name her, because she seemed unsure when she accidentally said it, but chose to try and gloss over it. I've only met Anna and her husband a few times, so I didn't know them very well. But I thought this sounded strange. But what hurt the most was probably the idea that she needed others to be happy. I asked why and if I wasn't enough for her. Was it just dating she wanted with others? No, she said she also wanted the freedom to have sex with whoever she wanted. My response, of course, was, forget it. That will never happen. But she insisted and launched into another long monologue about how great an open relationship was and how much sex I could have. Eventually, I cut her off and said that it might work great for Anna, but it's not for me. I want a partner. You. I don't want my wife sleeping around. She got really angry and, oddly enough, surprised, as if she thought that if she just pointed out how much sex I could have, I would somehow agree. After about half an hour, I couldn't argue with her anymore. And I said that I had no plans for an open relationship because then our vows to each other would be a joke. She wasn't happy but dropped the discussion for the day. I've been mulling over it ever since. Why was she so insistent about it? Why did the conversation revolve so much around her friend's relationship? We're not them? I have a bad feeling in my gut. What should I do? Update. Thank you for all the input I've received. I never expected this to spark so much interest. I've gotten a lot of advice. For example, to get tested and that the likelihood of her already having been unfaithful is high. When I got the last piece of advice, which was just one of many, I realized it was probably true. She was far too insistent for it to feel normal. I think that if someone wanted to bring this up with their partner, they should do it in a calm, non-pushy way first, so that they can feel out the other person without applying pressure. And they should also be worried that the person they're asking might get upset or hurt. Josephine didn't seem to have any of that concern. She just argued, and when that didn't work, argued even more intensely. The next day, I went to the hospital and took an STD test. I should get the results in a few days, hopefully by Friday. I've started snooping a bit, but I haven't found anything yet. I really hope you're all wrong about her already cheating, but I have a knot in my stomach, thinking that she's already seeing someone behind my back. I also looked up Anna. She's married and has a child. I've decided that if Josephine is cheating, I will talk to Anna's husband. He deserves to know what his wife is up to, meddling in other people's relationships. It feels like my wife is almost brainwashed by this. This morning, she tried to initiate intimacy, and I made up an excuse to avoid it. I really don't want to be with her right now. I'm extremely unsure about everything. I'm going to try to talk to her again soon to see if I can get more information about this. One piece of advice I received was to demand to see her phone. I plan to do that during our next conversation about this. Update 2. Thank you to everyone giving me advice. I'm reading almost all of it, even though I don't always have time to respond. It's Wednesday evening now, and today she brought it up again. She asked if I could consider trying it, just for a few weeks. I pointed out that it's unlikely I'd find a woman to date within a few weeks. It takes a long time for men to get results in things like this, especially if they're already in a relationship. I also told her that I think her behavior is forced and strange. Then I simply asked, "Who is he?" She started stammering and hesitating. She claimed there was no one, and I said I didn't believe her at all. She's acting desperate, and she definitely wouldn't be behaving this way unless there was someone she wanted to try out. I asked to see her phone, but she refused. I told her straight up that I'm seriously considering divorce because she's likely going behind my back, and her behavior is extremely suspicious, especially how aggressively she's trying to convince me. She said she needed to think about it before giving me her phone. But I said, either you give it to me now, or you don't need to give it to me at all. It's way too easy to delete messages on the phone and then hand it over. She tried to deflect the conversation or steer it off track so I'd lose focus. She became very angry and defensive, yelling at me that I was an asshole who didn't care about what she wanted or needed. After a lot of arguing, shouting and screaming, she admitted there was a man at work, but she claimed nothing at all had happened, except that she wanted something to happen. I asked her point blank several times if she had let him sleep with her. She kept saying no, but she was hiding something. Eventually it came out that she had exposed herself to him at work, and he had sent her pictures. They sexted every day and longed to be together. Naturally, I was furious. I usually stay calm, but this time I yelled at her. The trust is completely gone. What do I do now? I'm so upset I can't sleep. It's 2 in the morning here and she's asleep, but I can't relax. I'm going to go for a walk. Please help me figure out what I need to do next. Update 3. Thank you for all the support. I'm amazed that so many of you took the time to read and respond to this. I always read all the comments, both positive and negative. I've moved into a hotel room. I had enough yesterday. I had asked to see her phone, and she refused, so I got some software for my computer that could recover texts and other data from her phone if she eventually allowed me to see it. During one of her endless streams of excuses, I asked again if I could check her phone. She handed it to me without hesitation. So I went into my room, locked the door, and recovered all the messages. She was in total panic outside the door, trying to break it down. To all of you who said she was probably downplaying her infidelity, you were absolutely right. She's been sleeping with him for weeks, and it continued even after I confronted her. When she admitted to exposing herself, she then went to him afterward and slept with him. Unbelievable. Now she's bombarding me with texts and calls. I called one of my friends who came over to keep me company. I told him everything, and he tried to cheer me up. We went out to eat, and his wife came over in the evening, and we sat and talked. They left about half an hour ago, and now I'm alone and miserable again. I've told my parents and my friends what happened so that everyone knows. I've also changed my Facebook status to single. And I've blocked my wife's number because I couldn't deal with all the texts and calls. It's the same thing over and over in each message. I was wrong. It was stupid. I love you. We don't need to have an open relationship. And I promise to stop seeing him. Yeah, right. I also spoke with Anna's husband. I realized they might not have had an open relationship at all, and that Josephine was just using her as an example to try to get me on board with the idea. He froze when I started talking about what had happened. He told me Anna had been acting strangely for weeks. She hadn't brought up wanting an open relationship, but he felt like she was sneaking around with her phone. He said he might need to start looking into this more closely. We only talked for about 20 minutes and then ended the conversation. It felt awkward trying to make small talk afterward. Tomorrow I have an appointment with a lawyer to start the divorce process. I'm going to try to get some sleep, and we'll see if I make another update. I don't really see a reason to. This is over now. Update 4. Hello again. It's been a while since I last updated, and I hadn't planned on posting more. But a few things have happened that might be worth sharing. As I mentioned in the last update, I met with a lawyer to start the divorce process. It's now finalized. We didn't have any children or shared assets to speak of, so it took about 3 or 4 weeks to wrap everything up. When I filed for divorce, she went completely crazy. She showed up at my workplace, the gym, my parents' house, basically everywhere she knew I might be. I didn't want to talk to her and did everything I could to avoid her, but she refused to leave me alone. So I agreed to meet her one time on the condition that she would stop contacting me afterward. She accepted. We met at a cafe. I chose a table that was a bit out of the way. She had dressed up and clearly made an effort, but she still looked pretty worn out. She started by apologizing for her behavior, both trying to pressure me and the infidelity itself. Then she tried to explain why. She started with the usual excuses: loneliness, and how we weren't as connected anymore. You know, the typical nonsense cheaters use to justify their actions and avoid responsibility. I responded with, "So everything was my fault? Got it." She must have realized how I interpreted her words and tried a new explanation, which sounded almost identical. She cried and begged me to give us another chance. She even suggested that I could sleep around too if I wanted. I snorted so loudly at that idea that a woman 2 tables over turned to look at me. I had deliberately chosen a seat with my back to the exit so I wouldn't have to walk past her when I decided to leave. When it was time to go, she tried to grab me, but I just walked away. I've asked our mutual friends not to tell me what she's up to, who she's dating, or anything like that. I don't want to know. I have enough scars from this, and I don't want to reopen any wounds. But a female friend of mine told me that she's pregnant. She believes the father is the man she cheated with, but she doesn't think he wants to start a family with her. How lucky I was to get out of that situation. I can't even imagine the misery I would have endured if I hadn't found out the way I did. I also tested negative for STDs, so I dodged that bullet too. Thank you all for the advice you've given me throughout this ordeal. It made it so much easier to get through, and I probably avoided many mistakes because of your input. Thank you.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.